Oh, am I on? Well, hello there. Guess who's back? If you have been on my channel for a little bit, well, first of all, thank you for your loyalty. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing since the beginning. So if you have, then you know that I have been gone for quite a while, like almost a year. So basically, long story short, I'm doing better, and better than I have in years. It's such a weird thing that like I'll go through like 3 good years and then 3 like really bad, like down in the dumps years, and then I'll go back up to like 3 really good years and then 3 really depressed years. So the last 3 years have been like the really depressed years, and I feel like we're coming into like the years of plenty, you know, years of plenty, years of famine, I don't know, but that's just the journey that the Lord has me on right now. Yeah, we're just going to be talking about makeup and beauty and all that stuff. So if you are new here, hi, my name is Kat. I love talking about all things beauty, all things makeup, and I really like a collection that is kind of curated, so quality over quantity, and I like being a little bit more creative with like how to use my collection but still get certain effects out of it. So if that sounds good to you, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And without further ado, we're going to be talking about something that I have been working on for the last year. I didn't know that I was going to be doing this when I started it, but at the same time I kind of did. So long story, get ready. Over the past couple of years, I have been thinking about like how big my collection has gotten. I used to be the person that just wanted to get all of the makeup just to get more makeup. I didn't care about what makeup it was. I was just really into like exploring different brands and everything. I am still this person. I am still into exploring different brands and really just being adventurous with my makeup collection. But at the same time, I don't want to have so many repeats of formulas, of shades, etc. So a couple of years ago, I started sort of a project pan, low buy kind of deal, basically just trying to use and love the makeup that I have, giving it away to others who can use. Thank you. Giving it away to others who can use it more if I'm not loving it, and basically just kind of getting my collection to be smaller, not buying things that I don't need. So that's been the number one thing, has been like, but do I need this? In doing that, in that whole process, I realized I'm probably never going to pan eyeshadows. I can pan base products and stuff that I'm going to use every single day because that stuff doesn't really change from a day-to-day basis. But eyeshadow, lipsticks, blushes, those are things that I'm like, I just don't know that I'm ever going to be able to pan that. So what do I do? You know what I mean? And I didn't want to like tie myself down to a certain number of uses. So I was like, what do I do? What? So I realized, number one, just how many products I have, and number two, how long it takes to even like make a dent in one product. I started paying attention to those little expiration date symbols that we ought to be paying attention to, but like none of us really do. And I realized how many things were going to be going bad before I would ever get to use them, before I would ever use them up. And so I started basically just finding those and grouping them together by roughly when they would expire. And I'm talking like within a season, but also kind of by color story. And this started last fall. So I started with like palettes that were more of a fall type color story. So this video and the next video that I do, I'm going to do a 2-part kind of little deal. And so this one I'm going to be talking about how I got some more use out of certain palettes, and we're also going to be ranking the palettes that I decided to use this summer. It's a stack! And in the next video we're going to be talking about the palettes that I'm going to be choosing for fall, and probably also like choosing which looks out of those palettes, because I'm one of those people that like, I look at a palette and I'm like, oh wow, it is like so pretty. Now what? So if you're like me, I think that that video is going to be really helpful for you. But if you are also like me, a maximalist who wants to be a minimalist, I think that it's going to be helpful to look at kind of like my system of how to get some more use out of your palettes. So all of that to say, let's go ahead and get started talking about like my system for how I've been getting some more use out of my palettes over the last year. There's a really big rainstorm going on. There is also my AC that is on because it is hot as heck in the south right now. And I don't know how the microphone on this camera really works. So it could be interesting sound-wise. I'm hoping that it's better though, because this camera is new. So tell me if you think that the sound quality is better than in my last few videos. Just basically just always tell me. You know, if like your friend has something stuck in her teeth, like you tell her, be good friends and tell me, I need help. I started off by calling this my eyeshadow lookbook. If this doesn't just shout like serial killer. Here, let me turn down my lights a little bit. Ah, there we go. Okay, yeah. Let me explain this to you. I basically wrote down like which palettes I was going to be using. So Morphe 35M Boss Mood, Bold Obsessions from Milani, Celestial Thunder from Dominique Cosmetics, Gilded Ember from Milani, and Everyday Eyes from Milani. It was a very Milani heavy season. So I started by having this like giant swatch party with myself, and I went through each palette and I swatched in groups of shades, basically all of the looks I could come up with for each individual palette. I'm not the person to mix palettes together unless I have like a specific look in mind, so like don't worry, it wasn't that complicated. And so I basically went through and I wrote down all of the shades and like how they would kind of group together. So for instance, like a coral tangerine look, you know, and then that wasn't detailed enough for me, so I had to write down like the individual shades. It gets simpler, I promise. This is the clunky version. I did that for fall, and as I went through, I would just kind of tally them off. I had like a total over here, so I had 33 looks. So for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 palettes, I had 33 looks, roughly 6 looks per palette, okay? It's not crazy, you know, I think that that's, and most of that was the 35M, which is 35 shades. I went down here, I'm not sure why I have spring and then winter, but that's how it works out. So for the winter, I kind of did the same thing, but I almost like just was like, just give me the Christmas palettes, give me the Christmas looks. I'm going to take a break from the other ones. So I had a few different like kind of Christmassy palettes, you know, some greens, golds, reds. And then I did the same thing with spring. By the time spring rolled around, I was like, I just don't know if like I want this. I just didn't, it was hard to like sit down every day and be like, wait, what was I thinking, you know? So instead what I started doing was I made it a little bit more visual. So prepare your body, prepare your body. I did this. So I would swatch the individual looks, you know, for each palette on the actual paper. As you can see, spring was very like rosy and like nude heavy. No different over on this side. So by the time all was said and done for all of my different spring themed palettes, I had about 50 looks. So let me see how many palettes there were. I had 6 palettes with 50 looks. And so that was like, what? Watch me try to do math. I just... What's 9 times 6 again? I'm blanking on what is 9 times 6. My mom is going to be so disappointed. She's a math teacher. Uh-oh. That's going to kill me. 9 times 5 is 40, so 9 times 6 is 49. Yeah, roughly. So we went from having like 6 looks per palette back in the fall to now exactly 8.33 looks per palette in the spring. My rule for myself was like, if I finished a little bit early, then I would get to kind of do like a shop my stash in the weeks between what I define as spring versus summer. So for a couple of weeks after spring, it looks like I had 3 extra weeks. I kind of took some more spring themed palettes that weren't necessarily going to be expiring, but that I just kind of wanted to get some use out of. So we have like the Child from ColourPop, Vineyard Soiree from Colored Rain, Vintage Rose from Morphe. What was that brand? And so basically I just went through and I just kind of had some fun creating more looks and getting some more use out of my palettes. By that time I was really sick of those like rosy neutrals and, you know, in pinks and greens and purples. So I wanted like all of the color all of the time. So I basically got out all of my summer themed palettes, which are like all of my super colorful palettes. That's how I define summer. You do what you want. And so I was a little bit more organized with this one. It was also a lot bigger of a season for eyeshadow for me. We've had some loud thunder lately. It's been crazy. So I split them up, and not only did I swatch them, but I like wrote down like a theme for each one. So for instance, for the Lemonade Craze palette from Maybelline, I have one that's called like Sweet and Low, Iced Tea, In the Raw, Arnold Palmer. Like I basically like went a little nuts with the theming. And as you can see, I went nuts with the swatches as well. I just like, Yeah, there's 4 pages if you're counting the front and the back. So by the end of it, I wound up with 89 looks. I am currently, you're looking at look 85. So I've only got 4 left. So by the time I have this video up, I should probably be done with it. I'm trying to finish by my birthday, but that's in 2 days. I have been able to do 2 looks per day on some days this summer, so that's definitely helped me to get ahead. I'm not about like trying to get the most use out of these. I'm just trying to like get through these looks. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trying to like make them stretch, and like if that were the case, I just straight up wouldn't be wearing makeup, because it's not every day that you really feel like it. So I have done 85 looks. So that's kind of how I've like organized it to get to where I'm getting the most use. And I'm using these palettes in a way that's kind of helping me to fall in love with a whole bunch of them. I think that's good. That looks decent to me. Okay, tell me how the lighting looks. Thanks, friends. So now we are going to get to ranking all of those palettes that I had. Ranking is like a loose term. I don't know that I'm gonna like actually, oh gosh, I don't know. I think I'll just start and like we'll just do this in a chaotic fashion. I'm just gonna like grab for them, you know, when I'm like, ugh. Or when I'm like, urgh. My least favorite palette that I was trying to make use of this summer, Maybelline Lemonade Craze, without a freaking doubt. As you can see, I hit pan in 5 of the shades, but I only used this palette like 8 or 10 times. And any other eyeshadow palette, it would have taken me 75 uses to get down here with a shade like this. So that just tells you something about the dustiness, the lack of pigmentation. It's just a really difficult palette to work with, and nothing really comes out. The only shade that I would say is worth its salt, sugar coated right here. That is just, maybe I'll just swatch my favorite shade out of each palette. I think that would be fun. Oh yeah, girl. That's the one shade that I'm like, okay, I like this palette. The rest of the shades can go suck on a rock, because I just don't like this palette. I like the color story a lot. I like the choices, but I don't like the formula at all whatsoever. It's not worth it from Maybelline. They need to get their, apparently they have gotten their stuff together in the past couple of years, but I was very disappointed by this palette. And it's sad because it was very hyped. Like everybody was like, oh, these are so good. And I'm like, are you sponsored? I don't know. I'm not sponsored by anybody. I got no strings still. Okay, second kind of least favorite palette. How many palettes did I even have? Hang on. I had 9 palettes over the summer. So for 89 looks, I wound up with like almost 10 looks per palette. One of these is a palette of singles, but I'm still going to talk to you about it. There goes the AC. As you can see, kind of my inspiration is growing each time, and like how I'm putting together looks, and I'm getting like a little bit crazier with each season. Lemonade Craze, I had 10 looks inspired by that palette. So for a 12 pan palette, I think that's pretty decent to be getting 10 looks out of it. So it tells you a little bit about the variety and about the diversity within a palette when you can get, you know, roughly the same number of looks as the number of shades. I hope that made sense. Next, least favorite palette, the Profusion Wanderlust palette. I'm trying not to get my light in there, it's just distracting. I bought this because I was trying not to buy the Morphe 35 in Boss Mood palette, because I realized that palette, I was like, I just want the purples and the greens, so maybe I just need a palette that's got some purples and greens. Oh, and also blues. I just wound up buying this palette for $10 instead of that one for $25. But that one's way more worth it than this one. This one, it just, first of all, the color selection, I just don't like. It's okay. Some of the shades in here are really standouts to the point that like I'm probably not gonna like depot this palette or anything, because there are so many of them that I actually do enjoy. I love this jade shade. I really like this splash shade. This stormy shade is juicy. These two teals are beautiful. This like kind of like, how do you call that shade? Like a fuchsia? It's very, very beautiful. So it does have some standout shades in this palette, but the rest of them, and then like also, the smell. Please bear with me while we do an instant replay in slow motion.
The smell.
It smells like peanut butter and crayons and Play-Doh all mixed together. It's bad. As far as my favorite shade, I really think it's one of these two, although I do love that jade shade up there. Oh, that one's pretty too. That would be a really pretty look, actually, those three together, the best of shades in the palette. That would be an interesting video, wouldn't it? Like using the best shades in the palette together to come up with a look. It's like, it's just very reflective and it swatches beautifully, but their shades are really interesting because like they swatch really well, but they don't like apply on the eye very well. So I wound up having to use a glitter primer, and that's something that I have kind of like discovered and had an epiphany, not something I've had kind of an epiphany about this summer, is using a glitter primer underneath your shimmer shades. So yeah, that jade shade is really pretty. But as far as the performance, I don't really like the level of fallout that it has. Some of them just straight up don't come out of the pan. It's difficult to work with. And for $10, like, it's okay, but even for $10, I'm like, I don't want it. I don't like it. I'm gonna have I don't know. Oh yeah. I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, yeah. My third least favorite. So number 7. The Riviera palette from ABH. I was super stoked about this palette when I first got it because it's kind of a rainbow palette, but it was my first high-end palette experience. And so I just, were you? And this palette is a beautiful palette. It's just kind of difficult to work with. I didn't like the sheer level of fallout from every freaking shade in this palette. It doesn't matter if it's a shimmer or if it's a matte, you're gonna get a butt ton of fallout. It performs pretty well, but like you kind of have to sit with it for a minute and blend stuff out. So this was one that worked kind of better once I set my eyeshadow primer. For the price, I just didn't like love it. Well, the price for me was free because I was working at Ulta, but perks. There were some standout shades that I really did enjoy, but as a whole, it's not a super pleasing experience just visually, and then working with it, it's also kind of temperamental. So for that reason, I was like, it's not an easy palette, so I don't love it. My favorite shade in this palette is, hands down, this Mediterranean shade. It's got the most fallout out of any shade, but that kind of like denim blue, like periwinkle, is such a beautiful shade, and I love using it. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's pretty. It's nice. There were some shades that like I was excited about, and I still am excited about. Like that pink is insane. This white is fantastic. It's good, but like, is it great? I don't think so. ABH has such like a reputation that I just felt a little bit let down by that palette. Palette number 6 is going to be, I'm gonna do this one. This is the Violet Voss Coral Pop palette. It's a little 6-pan palette. It's cute, girl. It is very cute. This shade is not even showing up as bright as it is in the palette. Like, it is ridiculously bright in real life. I love that shade. It's a pressed pigment, but I really also love kind of this like butterscotch blending matte shade. I like the fact that this palette is mostly mattes, but the shimmer that they have in here, I don't like it. It's one of those like pink with a gold flip on top, like a yellow gold flip, and I just don't like shades like that at all. I don't like the way that they look. I don't like the way the effect that they have. It's just a weird combination for duochromes. I'm not a red and yellow person though, and so like pink and yellow together, I just don't like it. So, you know, that being 1/6 of the palette, automatically put this in like the middle lower end of my estimation. But this shade, Coral Pop, summery, like loud, vivid shade, it's nice. It's a nice shade, and these mattes blend out like a dream. This is the palette that I have in my eyes today. I made an all matte look just with these 4 kind of more neutral shades. It was decent, and it's a cute little palette. I just didn't really like the shimmer. That's the only reason that I didn't absolutely love this palette. So number 6 is the Trinity in Tokyo palette by BH Cosmetics. They've changed the packaging since, but I believe the formula is the same. And this is another rainbow palette, and this is a true rainbow palette. No neutrals, not a neutral in sight. The problem that I have with it is First of all, it's got that olive peanut butter smell. But also the color selection in here, I feel like could have been better. This is a punchy palette, but for 16 shades, I feel like I ought to be able to make looks with this palette alone. And I just don't feel that it gives me the variety in saturation to be able to do that. I really wish we had some more pastels. I mean, you have some redundancies over here. You've got too many red oranges over here. I really wanted a lilac color. I think that would have really brought this together. Also, the performance of this palette. It's not fantastic. This purple is better than the one in the ABH palette. And that's why this one ranks higher than that one, is because for the price, for like $16 or whatever this palette is, it's pretty great. It's pretty good. I'm not gonna say that it's like fantastic, but it's pretty good. This lime green shade is freaking beautiful. And I think those are my two favorite shades, but of the two of them, which one is my real favorite? I think it's this purple, because it's hard to get a purple that's formulated that well, especially in like a more affordable palette. Ooh, I love that. Although I do love this acid lime green. I'm just a sucker for shades like that. So that's why this palette lands kind of in the middle. It's good, but not great. I think that it's worth the money. I'm glad that I have it, because if I ever need shades like this, I can kind of use it as that companion palette. Number 4 is the Bailey Sarian X Estate Venice Fling palette. First of all, the packaging, so cute. But also the shades in here are just such a nice selection that gives you kind of like a lot of variety. And this definitely looks Bailey Sarian to me. But the reason why this one is landing kind of, you know, in that middling range at number 4 is that I don't like the shimmers in this palette. And for 5 of the 9 shades to be shimmers that I don't like, that's over half of the palette, you know? But the reason why it got as high as number 4 is that these 4 mattes blend out like a dream. They are so beautiful and soft and yet still pigmented. They are the kind of like pigment level that like I could use this one as a bronzer and this one as a blush and it would look fine, but then I can turn right around and use it as an eyeshadow and just build it up a little bit more. So I really like that they're kind of buildable. They're that middle level of pigmentation that's really easy to work with. It's just truly like you just slap it on and it just kind of does the work for you. So I really like the mattes in this palette. The shimmers I don't really like. For those mattes, it's getting the number 4 spot. So as far as my favorite shade, I would have to say it's this toasty shade. That's the one I always want to use when I use this palette. It's just that beautiful kind of neutral reddish orange rosy shade. It's so nice and soft and I love it. Next is BH Cosmetics Hangin' in Hawaii. Again, they've changed the packaging. I think they did for all of their travel series. As you can see, beautiful, kind of like rosy, neutral, you know, orangey, very warm toned palette. And the mattes and the shimmers both perform really beautifully in this palette. This one outperforms so many different high-end formulas that I have. I have swatched it next to the Huda Beauty Rose Gold Remastered palette, and I've swatched it next to the ABH Modern Renaissance palette, and this one beat out both of those. Maybe not in like pigment depth, but definitely in the shimmers, like 100% beat out those palettes. If you're looking for like a really decent kind of rosy, neutral, warm toned palette, I think that you're really gonna enjoy this one. As far as my favorite shade, oh yeah, I know. Excuse me. As far as my favorite shade in this palette, I'm stuck between these two. This Waikiki like bronze shade, so beautiful. But I think I have to go for this coconut shade. It's a matte and it is just stunning. It's a matte and it blends out so lovely, but it like still maintains its pigmentation. And I don't know why, but like every time I look at this palette, my eye just goes like right to that shade, and I want to use it with this shade. This palette is really fun to work with. It's very easy if you're wanting to get into just, you know, expanding your collection. This palette from BH is fantastic. Hanging in at number 2 is my singles palette from ColourPop, and it's mostly ColourPop, but I do have 2 different shades from Terra Moons. Those are Those are so beautiful. I just recently added those to my collection this summer. As you can see, I've kind of made like almost my own like rainbow palette, but I just kind of use these as like companions for any other looks that I have. I would put this at number 1, except that those are my 2 favorite shades in the palette. The rest of them, the ColourPop shades, they work well. They work okay. I would probably give them like a 7 or 8 out of 10, but they're not like amazing. It's not like I use them and I'm like, yes, you know, it's just that they're better than the other ones for the most part. I don't know. These 2 shades made me put this one above Hanging in Hawaii, but if those were not in here and if they were just 2 other ColourPop shades, I definitely would have put this below Hanging in Hawaii. And then the fact that like I was using some of the shades from this palette to kind of like replace, especially for the Lemonade Craze palette, to kind of bump up the pigmentation and actually make it do what I wanted it to do. And I find myself reaching for this palette when I just want something bright and colorful. I also use this in conjunction with the Trinity and Tokyo palette a few different times because this one has those pastels that I kind of wanted, and so it was a really nice companion palette for that palette, which is a companion palette for others. I don't know. As far as my favorite shade, I'm gonna have to go with this one. This is the shade Looking Glass from, oh lordy, look at that. I can't even speak. It's so beyond gorgeous. Oh man, do you see it? Do you see it like changing in the light? It's so perfect. Is it a turquoise? Is it a purple? Is it an emerald? Yes, the answer is yes. I don't know if you can see it like changing there, but like, oh, it's insane. I love that shade. I love using singles, and I'm really tempted to like depot a whole bunch of eyeshadow palettes just so that I can rearrange them and like create my own palettes and everything. Number 1, this is the Lovecraft Beauty Warm Rituals eyeshadow palette. First of all, the packaging, I mean, can you get cooler vibes? Like, that is so neat. But also the color story is absolutely insane. I've spoken about this palette multiple times on my channel since I got it last October. Wait, no, I haven't. This is the first. Oh my gosh, this is the first that y'all are hearing of this. These neutral shades are beautiful. The mattes blend out like a freaking dream, but these shimmers are where this palette really stands out, and specifically this pyrite shade is the best like peridot shimmer that I have in my collection, hands down, bar none. It is so beautiful. I love this palette just for that shade. But this orange, it's the best orange shimmer that I have in my collection. I literally sometimes I just sit here and stare at this palette because it's that pretty. And the fact that it's like so small and compact, but I can get so many different looks out of it, it just makes me that's what shade selections are supposed to do, is like you look at a palette and automatically know where you want to go with it. So yeah, that is my walkthrough of my strategy for using my palettes and also my summer palette ranking. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and stay tuned for the next segment of this video, which is choosing my palettes for fall and choosing the looks that I'm going to be creating over fall. I think I like guesstimated it the other day, and I want to say I had like 11 palettes for fall. How I'm going to put those on my eyeballs in the course of only like 3 months? Well, really it's like 2.5, because I count it from like September 1st all the way through Thanksgiving. So it's like 2.5 months. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we're going to get through the strategizing together. It'll be fine. I'm just going to have to crank it and wear makeup every single day of my life. It'll be all right. So I will see you again in that next video. Bye. Bye. Yeah, give me a second. I'll give you a proper send-off. So yeah, now that I'm all gussied up and I've got my lipstick going on, I'll see you next time.